Noel Bruton is a UK-based consultant, author and trainer who advises companies on improving IT support. This series of videos uses material from his training seminars and conference presentations. In this presentation, I'd like to look at the help desk and the service desk, two alternative ways of delivering IT support to end users. I'm going to do this by comparing and contrasting the various functions and features of the two and eventually arriving at some kind of conclusion. We'll examine the basic functions and benefits. Because we need to understand where we are and where we're going, it's always handy to know where you came from. So we'll be looking at the history and the drivers, looking then at the differences between the two and the key issues affecting them both, from which you can draw some kind of conclusions. And at the end, I'll offer what I consider to be my preferred future. Looking at the functions and benefits, the help desk. Its job really is to take incoming technical calls from end users and resolve them, or if it can't resolve them itself, it should then also have an escalation procedure by which it can assign those calls to somebody who can. The service desk does that, but it does more besides. As well as offering the help desk service, it also deals with any IT-based inquiry from the users, and these could be clerical or administrative or procurement. The service desk becomes more of an IT central one-stop shop as opposed to a single service technical support. It's possibly staffed in part by technicians and maybe in part by clerical staff. Looking at the history of the two, the help desk emerged organically in order to meet a growing business need. In the 1970s, transaction processing made VDUs available to end users as opposed to entering data into computers via card punches. End user computing was born. In the 1980s, that was augmented further by the arrival of the desktop PC. Now the computing was done on users' desks. There were an awful lot of inquiries for assistance, authorities, technical support, training and so on, and these needed to go somewhere. The help desk was born as a way of responding to that. The service desk is different. It was produced as part of the Information Technology Infrastructure Library, which was the UK public sector's attempt to standardise government computing. And although ITIL first came about in the late 1980s, it was largely ignored by the private sector until around about 2002, when it was popularised by help desk software vendors. Because the UK has a rich market for these tools, they needed to differentiate themselves from one another in order to stay competitive. A few of them picked up on ITIL as a framework they could build into their software, and the service desk gradually was born. Another driver was the fact that the service desk itself is an attractive idea. Why not put all inquiry-based services in one place, not just technical support? Because with that, perhaps we could make better use of common resources, better use of staff, we could reduce duplication, it would be easier for the customers to understand and so on, perhaps even cheaper as a result. So we find that the creation of service desks often accompanies IT services centralisation. It allows for a rebranding opportunity. It's a marketing thing to change from a help desk to a service desk. It's a form of advancement or the appearance of advancement. There are some big differences and big issues that are affecting them both. Help desk, for example, has a certain weakness. It has a limited remit, which means that it can leave non-technical services unprovided, or the needs for them unmet, or perhaps unmanaged, scattered through the company, scattered through various other resources. Because the help desk is a technical service, really. It's a technical support provider. The help desk's natural link to IT, having technical staff, can cause them not to have service aspirations, more to have technical aspirations, which is a little bit of a rift between the help desk and its customers, the end users. The other thing is that the help desk really is something of an old-fashioned construct. These days, IT is more reliable and centralised than it used to be. The users are more sophisticated, and these factors tend to mean that there's less of a need for technical intervention. So perhaps the help desk belongs to a previous era. On the other hand, is the service desk a valid replacement? The service desk has a broader remit, but it has a non-technical nature in so much as it does a technical nature, and that mixture of the two can place a limitation on career paths for people who work inside the service desk. It can also be wasteful. If you have a number of technicians working for the service desk who are then forced also to take on some of these clerical functions or administrative functions, Why do we need to pay somebody technical salaries to do something that could be left to somebody who doesn't have a requirement for the same level of experience? There's a quality issue as well. Service desks that have less technical staff may suffer from a lower first-time fix rate, and a lower first-time fix rate is a measurable business cost. Because the lower the first-time fix, the longer the user has to wait for a resolution. And the longer the user has to wait for a resolution, the less productive he manages to be than he would have been had his computer been working properly. There's also the possibility of a variable service. When you call the service desk, are you going to get somebody who's an experienced technician, or are you going to get somebody who's not an experienced technician but can log the call for you? In a help desk, that's less of an issue. In a service desk, it definitely is one. There's the question of staff retention. If the work that a technician is asked to do doesn't challenge him the way he wanted to be challenged to do something technical, what will that do for his job satisfaction and his intention to stay with the company? And also, the broader the service portfolio, as is the case in the service desk, it could be accused of spreading itself too thinly. My preferred future for IT support takes a look at the service desk and wonders whether we still need it. We start with a clear support strategy. Now, a clear support strategy is not one that is designed because we've gone ITIL, therefore we have to have a service desk, or because we've got a bunch of technicians, therefore we have to have a help desk, because that's too after the fact. It should be done by design. We examine the user needs, decide what that means in terms of the services we have to provide. We then get business agreement and assess the affordability of those services, and that means they're cost justified so we can do them properly. We can then train the staff not just to be technicians but to provide the services and deliver those services and to take ownership of them, so we get quality in terms of customer service as well. In other words, we design our IT support provision from the ground up with all the care and meticulousness that you would do if you were designing any other non-IT based service. I would have a high first-time fix rate to respect user productivity, because user productivity is crucial. That's what we do. We make sure that the users stay productive. The other thing is this non-diagnostic clerical style work, unlike typical help desk work, doesn't require the diagnosis of a problem. A help desk inquiry, a technical inquiry, how do I do this, might require technical diagnosis. But if somebody calls in and says, I need to buy a new laptop, for example, a procurement question, there is going to be a standard procedure for doing that. There'll be a standard procedure for have you got the budget, there'll be a standard procedure for where do we buy it and how do we buy it and what pieces of paper have to be exchanged and so on. That's pre-known. We shouldn't really need to have human intervention to deal with something that's pre-known. We can anticipate all those types of inquiries, and if we can anticipate them, we can automate them. We can stick them all on a website in the form of forms or in the form of self-help. I think it's time to forget this one-stop shop. We don't really need it. If we automate all the things that are clerical and all the things that are just procedural and put them onto a website and leave only the technical calls to be dealt with by human beings, this one-stop shop idea is no longer relevant. The users aren't daft. They know that certain types of things they can buy from a supermarket because they can be widely anticipated to other types of things they have to go to a specialist for. They can make that distinction themselves. They don't necessarily need a one-stop shop. To my mind, the service desk era really is over. Much of what made it the service desk can be automated. And if it is automated, that leaves us free to provide a high-quality technical service with a high first-time fix rate from trained technical staff. In other words, a reversion to the help desk. It's more direct, it's better for staff and customers, and it may even be cheaper than the service desk because there are people who would have been there doing clerical functions where those clerical functions are now being performed by a website.